here. Okay. All right, we're live. Let's jump on into this. Let's get started. Dennis Schroder, the semi-final guy to fall in the free agent market, and he's agreed to sign with the Boston Celtics. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for at least watching the video. I today am talking about Dennis Schroder, obviously, and talking a little bit about what it means for the Boston Celtics as they add another guard to the rotation. And let's just go from there. Before we get started, again, I love doing this stuff. I'm talking about Dennis Schroder. I'm looking him up right now to get a little bit more detail on him. But we are talking today about Schroder and what he means for the Celtics. If you enjoy content of mine, another video brought you here, feel free to subscribe to the channel. We're making videos like this all the time. We're doing nightly summer league breakdowns, talking about who performed throughout the day. And again, winners and losers video will be coming shortly as soon as we get a little bit more clarification of what's happening with Lauri Markkanen. And that's really it. Markkanen is kind of the next guy to fall, and then we'll kind of get started there. But today we're talking about Dennis Schroder. So again, subscribe, like the video, comment. Let's get into Dennis Schroder. So Schroder signs for, as you can see here on the bottom of the screen, 5.9. That is the taxpayer mid-level exception. So Boston elects to use that on Dennis Schroder. I like the pickup initially. When I heard about it and when we kind of got word about the rumors of Dennis Schroder potentially going to Boston, I had, obviously the money has to work out, but for getting a dude, and the reason I pulled up his account was because I needed to just double check. This guy was a 6th man of the year candidate. Did he ever win it? I don't think he did. So as for a dude that won 6th man of the, or he's just a guy who had been coming off the bench for Oklahoma City a couple years ago, and a dude that had been solid in Atlanta. I think Boston lands a dude for 5.9 million, a 1-year deal, a year rental of Dennis Schroder. I feel like is absolutely great for the Celtics, because I feel like they already have some dudes on their team, and we'll kind of break down their roster right now to talk about it. But I like it. I think I know that Schroder, and I'm personally one of the guys that was not super high on him going into free agency. I think if a team was willing to give him a high amount of money like the Lakers were earlier in the season, then I feel like that wouldn't have been, I would have been totally against that if I was a team. Like giving Dennis Schroder 20 million. I mean, Mike Conley's making 20 million. Obviously, Chris Paul's making a bunch of money. Cameron Payne, like Schroder's making more money closer to what Cameron Payne makes versus what Mike Conley makes. So, kind of interesting. And that's just what the market was for him out there. And man, his agent and him and his team have got to be kicking themselves. I think Schroder's probably the biggest loser of free agency, just because, look, he had an offer for making annually 20 million a year to re-sign with the Lakers, and the Lakers are like, wow, we dodged a bullet there, because if they would have kept Schroder, none of the Westbrook thing happens. They probably roll back and run it back with the same exact team. Maybe they make a trade, maybe they trade Kuzma or Montrez or KCP still, but this is amazing to me how poorly of a job this was done by Schroder and his camp. But again, basketball wise, let's talk about that. I think he actually fits pretty nicely. I'll pull up the Celtics roster here. So obviously Tatum, Horford, this is just the payroll. Tatum, Horford, Brown, Smart, Richardson, Romeo Langford. I don't think Dunn's going to play at all. He might be traded again. Aaron Nesmith, Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard, Robert Williams, Bruno Fernando, Carson Edwards, and this Cantor, who they just signed. So they have dudes, and then throw Schroder on top of that. I can see him being the backup point guard for Boston. I don't see him being the starter, just because a lot of what we've heard out of Boston is that they are going to try to groom Marcus Smart to be their point guard of the future. And I think Schroder, I've always thought this, Schroder is a better player when he's playing against second unit guys. I just don't think that you can put him alongside Tatum and Jaylen Brown and say, hey, thrive. I think he needs the ball in his hands. That's why he was a good sixth man, because again, let's be honest, sixth man of the year winners are just the guys who score the most points coming off the bench. So since he's kind of a high usage player, I think a reserve role for him would be best. I think that's what they'll play him. Again, so I just like him for depth. And, you know, there will be rotations where the Celtics use both him and Marcus Smart at the same time. So a Marcus Smart, Dennis Schroder defensive backcourt is pretty lethal. And I think that's something that can really help them stand apart. So if they do play some dynamic guards in the Eastern Conference, like a Bradley Beal, maybe like a, going against Kyle Lowry and the Miami Heat, like they get a good defensive backcourt for the future. Not the future, but for the season. And so it's just interesting to me. I think that's going to be a really interesting backcourt defensively. Offensively, probably not. Schroder was not great in his year with the Lakers. He did not shoot the ball particularly well. His effective field goal percentage was down. I just don't know how good a point guard can play, especially when his talent is as low. You know, I'm not going to bag on Schroder here, but like his talent of a point guard isn't like, Kyrie Irving's playing alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So he was the best player. He's probably the best point guard that LeBron had played with other than Kyrie. And again, we kind of talk about him like he had a bad season last year. So for me, I look at it and I say, I think a situation where he's out of LA, not with a team that's using two players as much as the Lakers use Anthony Davis and LeBron James for, where he can, again, come off the bench, be pretty high usage off the bench and being able to score, do his thing, just in the reserve role. I think that's the important thing here. I don't think Celtics fans should think that he's just going to come in and start immediately. I just don't see that scenario playing it out that way. The other thing I wanted to mention here with the Celtics is that they have not done a whole lot in free agency. Now, again, they've been strapped with money. It's not like they could do much. They needed to get off the Kemba Walker deal. They did, but they also brought in a not so team-friendly contract in Al Horford. That, I feel like, is just more bringing our guy back, bringing him back to the fold, making sure that he is... we bring in Horford's leadership and experience to a relatively young team. So I think that's a good move, as good of a move as you can make without like sacrificing multiple picks for a bad contract. So as long as you have that, you're fine. But other than that, they weren't able to do too much. They were able to get off Tristan Thompson's money and essentially turn him into Josh Richardson. They weren't able to bring Evan Fournier back. Again, I don't know exactly what Fournier's responsibilities would have been this year when two really good wings are leading this team in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So I don't know where Fournier kind of falls into that category. I think this is the next best option. I think that they did as good as they can. Let's be honest, Boston is not a place where I think players desire to go. We've heard it so many times. I'm not going to bag on the Celtics a whole lot here, but it's just not a place that players have historically wanted to go. Like, who's the biggest free agent that has decided to go to Boston? Is it Al Horford? Okay, is it Gordon Hayward? Like, these aren't high-level elite players that are being attracted to Boston. So knowing that that big fish isn't out there, they are able to fill in their roster with other pieces or other players of depth that can help them become better. So I really liked this for the Celtics. Again, Schroder for less than $6 million for only 1 year. Like, he could be awful, and you're like, well, stop playing him, or he's not our problem after a year, most likely, right? Like, this isn't a long-term investment for the Celtics. This is another piece to the puzzle for them as they try to improve off of last year, which, by the way, I do think the Celtics will be a lot better next year. I think because of the lack of sexy moves that the Celtics haven't really made, I think to the average fan, they'll just be like, oh, Al Horford's back in Boston. Oh, yeah, Josh Richardson, wasn't he good in Miami or something like a while ago? Okay. And then, Dennis Schroder. So I think these moves, along with players maturing, players developing, I think that can help the Celtics be a team that's going to be a top 5 team in the East next year. 6th seed is as low as I'm going with the Celtics. And again, I'm not a huge buyer of the Bulls. I was really thinking that they were going to be good, and I just kind of have come back to reality a little bit with it. We'll see how their experiment works out. History tells us that it probably isn't going to be great for the first 20 games of the season, and we'll see if they can catch up. As opposed to the Celtics, I feel like they can just use their guys. They have some key players that are new, but aren't like filling major roles. And then again, Horford's coming in, filling in probably a similar position and a similar role to what he had when he was with the Celtics the first time around. So I still think the Celtics are good. I think this is a really good pickup. And again, cheap money. Schroder is not a whole lot of money out there. It's bad for Schroder. Good for the Celtics. You make it work and you kind of roll from there. That's all I got to say about this signing. I can see, again, some people being against it, but again, I just feel like the reserve role is good for Dennis Schroder on this team. That's all I have to say on this. If you liked the video, again, press the like button. If you want to subscribe to the channel or check out some of my other videos, again, do it. Subscribe to the channel. I got a lot of these. We'll be doing another Summer League episode tonight, as day 3 of the Summer League will conclude tonight. And then we'll be talking about winners, losers, best teams going into or coming out of free agency, and a lot of that on a future stream. But again, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment on this video. Tell me if you liked the Schroder pickup or if you didn't like the Schroder pickup for the Boston Celtics. Other than that, you guys have a great rest of your day, and we will see you in the next video coming out later tonight.